I'm Trey Guillotine, and today I'm talking about what I thought of X-Men Apocalypse, and if the MCU and the X-Men universe should combine. Let's geek out. I have to admit, going into X-Men Apocalypse, I was a little nervous, and I don't really know why, because aside from maybe one or two of the series titles, I've been a pretty big fan of the entire X-Men movie universe. I walked out of that movie fully enjoying it. I was entertained, I thought the movie was fantastic. I really loved seeing Xavier's School for the Gifted Children kind of at its prime, accepting a full host of students, giving, a full range of new mutants to introduce. It was really cool to see just the school at its prime. Because so often, the X-Men movies and the X-Men titles are so focused on the X-Men joining up to, fight the bad guy, and don't get me wrong, that's definitely what they did in this movie, but there was definitely a lot of, this is a school, this is a community, it's, people who are gifted learning to work and live in the world with the rest of humanity, and I just thought that was a really good thing. If I had one critique about it, it would be that a lot of the new mutants that were introduced, aside from three major ones, there were a lot of new mutants introduced, like Psylocke, like Angel, like Storm, Jubilee. There were a lot of new mutants that were introduced, and aside from maybe Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler, they didn't have a whole lot of character to them. They didn't really have a whole lot of others. They barely had any lines. I would be surprised if any of them had more than a dozen lines each. So that's really my only critique, but for the rest of it, I thought it was fantastic. I even cried at the end because I'm just a sucker for scenes in movies and TV shows where the heroes come together and really join up and work together to defeat the bad guy. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. But with this new X-Men movie, it brings up the question of should and could the X-Men movie universe join the Marvel Cinematic Universe? For the longest time, I really thought they couldn't, or that they shouldn't. If somehow X-Men found a way to join the MCU, I was really worried that it would have to be a reboot. They would basically have to do away with everything that's happened in the X-Men Cinematic Universe and just start fresh. And I really didn't want that to happen because I think the X-Men universe has been built very strong. Like I said, there's a few not so great titles, but for the most part, it's done very well. It's been a great cinematic universe. So I really didn't want X-Men to be rebooted and retconned just so it could join the MCU. I also feel that on its own, X-Men just on its own is a huge universe involving hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of different mutant character superheroes that the X-Men Cinematic Universe can focus on. So on its own, X-Men has the potential to be its own huge, vast universe on its own, and I don't think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the X-Men universe really need each other. I'd also be worried that if the X-Men Cinematic Universe came on, Wolverine would be their biggest focus, because Wolverine is the X-Men's golden child. So just like I was worried about Spider-Man because it's Marvel's golden child, Spider-Man overshadowing all the other heroes, which thankfully wasn't the case in Civil War, but I'd still be worried that the same would happen with Wolverine. And that's been one of the strengths of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is that they focused on characters that haven't gotten all of the spotlight, or haven't gotten as much of the spotlight as some of the other more popular characters. They've been kind of, like they said when Avengers first came out, they're rolling out the B team, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking characters that were a little lesser known and making them big names. So ultimately, I don't think that the X-Men Cinematic Universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe need to be combined. But on the other hand, and again, I was thinking about this more, really where the timeline is with the new X-Men Cinematic Universe, with First Class and Days of Future Past and now X-Men Apocalypse, they really could work in the MCU and the X-Men Cinematic Universe with each other, because pretty much everything that's happened in this new timeline has happened between the 60s and the 80s. So you had Captain America that happened in the 1940s, and then since then, there's nothing else really going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe aside from Agent Carter. There's nothing else really going on up until 2008. So they could work in and combine both universes without retconning anything and just work in a few lines of dialogue of how this has all been going on together, or how this happened in the past and now there are mutants and people knew about them but they've been pretty quiet, so no one really was paying that much attention anymore. So it's definitely possible that they could. I don't think that they will. I have a feeling if for some reason Fox ever gets its head out of its ass and realize that the deal that Sony has made, where basically Marvel does the work and Sony collects the money, if Fox ever catches on to that and disproves the fact that they are stubborn as they are greedy, and the X-Men do come over to the MCU, I have a feeling that they would basically just completely retcon everything and start fresh, which I can't really blame them for, because the way Marvel Studios has been making its movies is the same way that Marvel Comics has been making its comics. They were writing stories that they want to read. So Marvel Studios has been doing the same. They're making movies that they want to make, and as good as the X-Men universe has been, it's not necessarily their vision, and if they have control of X-Men, they would want to have their vision in their films. So I have a feeling if it ever happened, they would just completely retcon everything. Like I said, I can't blame them, but I don't want that to happen because I've really enjoyed the entire X-Men cinematic universe. Yeah, I even liked 3 because Beast is and always will be my favorite mutant, and the same thing with Apocalypse. Beast was definitely my favorite. I loved all the mutants. Again, Quicksilver was... he had a great scene. He had great scenes in the first one, but I'm glad they really brought his character more out and fleshed it out and gave him more screen time in this one because he was just such a great character. Basically, every scene he was in, he stole the show. But ultimately, I loved X-Men. I loved X-Men Apocalypse. I was really entertained by it. I was really, I wasn't let down. I really enjoyed watching it. But I don't think that the X-Men Cinematic Universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe should join together. I don't think that would be in the best interest of either studios. What did you think about X-Men Apocalypse, and how do you feel about the MCU and X-Men joining together to make one big universe? Not that it'll ever happen, but what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and check me out on Patreon to support more of my content. Check me out on all the internet, and share the video so we can geek out some more. Thanks for watching, and have fun. So Captain America, Thor, Hulk.